Sudina, you can turn on your video if you like.
I see only 10 participants.
Others,
Unusual.
yeah, they will be coming. Some are busy, I guess. So it's 6 o'clock. So we are going to begin our bi-weekly sutra discussion. And we are on Facebook Live and YouTube Live right now. So let us begin our bi-weekly sutra discussion by paying respect and homage to the Buddha by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. So, Venerable members of the Mahasangha, dear friends in Dhamma, whoever is joining us on Facebook and YouTube, I would like to welcome all of you to our bi-weekly sutra discussion. So today, our conversation is going to be with the world-renowned American Buddhist monk, Dhamma and meditation teacher, the famous translator of the Pali Tipitaka, the most venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, who was very happy with our sutra discussion, and we invited him respectfully to come and teach us. And our first conversation with him went well. And then Bhante Bodhi, also we lovingly call him Bhante Bibi, or Bibi. Not baby, Bibi. Was kind enough to come back for the second conversation with him. And there are a lot of monks and lay people who are eagerly waiting for this moment. And we normally have many monks joining this discussion, but today I think some venerables are busy with their own temple virtual programs. Maybe it's also the month of May is busy for all the monks because of the Vesak celebration. It's a blessed month. But I'm hoping that some venerables are going to show up later. But today, let me just give a brief introduction or acknowledge the venerables who are present at this moment. From Seattle, we have Venerable TV, and from Chicago, we have Venerable Vimala Bhikkhuni, and from Ottawa, Canada, we have Venerable Bhante Jinananda, and from Detroit, USA, but at the moment he's in Seattle for a spiritual engagement, commitment, Bhante Kusala, and from Ottawa, Canada, we have Bhante Vijita, and then from Minnesota, USA, we have Bhante Kamalasiri, and from California, we have Ayya Sobana Dhammadharini, and from Pittsburgh, USA, we have Bhante Pemaratana, Pittsburgh Buddhist Center. And from Geneva, Switzerland, we have Dr. Bhante Dhammika. And from Sri Lanka, we have Bhante Pieratana. And from we have Venerable Ayya Sudinna is also here from South Carolina. And Bhante Suddhaso is here from New York. And then Bhante Sunita is from Ottawa, Canada, but at the moment he is here at our temple, joining us from another room. So I would like to respectfully welcome all of you to our bi-weekly sutra discussion. And so we are having this special conversation with our beloved Bhante Bodhi regarding the modern ethical issues. And the first session actually went very well. And today is the second session with him. We have more questions. Last time we had about 16 questions from the monks and nuns and the lay people, and we could cover up to question 8. So we have 8 more remaining, and we will try to finish them today. To ask the first question, actually these questions are mainly from the lay people, and I would like to invite Bhante Kusala to ask the first question from Bhante Bodhi.
Bhante, now this question is from Thairiny Silva from Mogi Mirim city in Brazil, and she has 2 questions. The first question is, what is the limit for fighting for rights in movements such as feminism and anti-racism? So she's asking, in fighting for feminism and anti-racism, what is the limit for fighting for rights? I think
first, maybe I don't like the language of fighting, since the word fighting initially suggests that one is going to resort to some kind of violence in order to achieve one's rights. So let us say, what is the limit in standing up for rights and advocating for rights and petitioning for rights? So that will remove the overtone of violence from the question. And in that case, I don't see that there should be any limit as long as one advocates, petitions, protests, demonstrates in a nonviolent manner. Nonviolence in bodily action, nonviolence in speech, but one stands up, in the case of feminism, standing up for equal rights for women in the political, social, and economic spheres, standing up against racism in the various dimensions of our social and communal lives. So standing up for them, there are various ways one can do this, many ways to do this without resorting to violence. One can, in this country, the United States, one can write to one's representatives advocating for things like the Equal Rights Amendment, Equal Rights Act, which has now been passed by the House of Representatives, but it's not yet been endorsed by the Senate. One can sign petitions, one can go on marches, demonstrations. So that there are many avenues for nonviolent action available to one in the cause of either feminism or anti-racism.
Yeah. And she has a, thank you, Bhante Bodhi, for the wonderful answer. And her second question is, in case of pregnancy due to rape, would abortion also be considered bad karma? And thank you for your kindness, she says.
Yeah, this is quite a difficult question, because it's very easy for me. I'm a man, so I'm not going to get pregnant. And so I will never face the situation where I might be raped and have to face the question, should I get an abortion? So, strictly, if we go according to the Buddhist, like the 10 courses of wholesome action, The destruction of life is said to be always unwholesome karma, and abortion is definitely, it's a form of destruction of life. And if a monk either arranges for an abortion, performs an abortion, advocates for an abortion, then he's in danger of committing parajika, losing his status as a monk. But I want to take some issues where this question can become very, very delicate, and even there's a certain ambiguity. Suppose we have a girl, 12-year-old girl, who's been raped. If her pregnancy goes through to completion, her body, maybe she's a thin, underweight girl. The body is not yet strong enough to be able to deliver a baby. And so the doctors come to a decision. If she goes through with the pregnancy, she's going to die. And maybe the baby will die as well. So then they face the question, should they perform an abortion? And now I'm not saying that a Buddhist doctor should be involved in this issue, but I'm rather looking at it from the standpoint of what kind of moral judgment we should make upon any doctor who performs the abortion, in the case where performing the abortion will, of course, take the life of the fetus, but it will save the life of the girl. Whereas if the doctor doesn't perform the abortion, the girl will die and the baby will also die. So this becomes a rather difficult question, and I don't have in my opinion, I would say in that case, the doctor should go through with the abortion to save the life of the girl, rather than risk losing the life of both the girl and the baby. In the case, say, of a mature girl, say a girl who might be 18 years old or in her 20s and she is raped, again, it's easy for me to say that one should not destroy life. And so one should go through with the pregnancy, complete it, give birth to the infant, and then you can put the infant up for adoption. So that would be the easy answer. But there are many different difficult psychological conditions that a girl will face in giving birth to a child. And so I don't want to assume that I have the right to make a judgment about that. But maybe, as I said, in relation to our discussion last time, 2 weeks ago, don't think that I'm in the position here to pontificate on all of these issues, but maybe somebody else will have some opinion about this.
Yeah, this is an open discussion. Any venerable could jump in if you want to share your perception, your idea, or your view or perspective. And I also would like to open up this for the lay people. And I know you can't join the Zoom discussion with us. I know you're watching us live on Facebook and YouTube, but if you have any particular question, please make a comment, and our assistant will go through every comment. And if there's a particular question regarding the answer given by Bhante Bodhi, we will ask that question for you.
So, Bhante, about 6 years ago, a friend's friend approached me on Skype, and she was in a situation like this, and she particularly said she's not prepared to have a baby.
Yeah.
And the father kind of, has been telling her that he cannot make any woman pregnant. So it was a medical condition that he has been presenting, but accidentally or somehow she got pregnant. Mm-hmm. And when she approached me about abortion, all I did was just remind, she's also a Buddhist student from Russia. Yeah. And I was able to remind her that, answering something like this is something to do with Vinaya, and I would But by saying that, I still hold the guilt in my mind that I was not a good friend to her in that situation. Analyzing this, I think these are very sensitive moments, and
Yeah,
nobody has perfect answers. So I'm only
yeah,
adding that experience here. Um, for other venerables, I think most importantly, whether they decide to have the baby or not, I think we can just at least show our compassionate
no,
presence.
no, no.
Yeah, so that's my bit for now. But I wanted to bring that also to this discussion.
Yes, um, 1.5 year ago, nearly 1.5 year ago, I was in Sri Lanka and I went to hospital in rural Sri Lanka down south, and the the thing I saw was so difficult to actually see, because 11 years girl was raped, and
Mm.
then she was admitted to the hospital after the incident, actually for 4 or 5 weeks. The doctors found out that she was pregnant.
Yeah,
So then they decided that there should be the solutions because of the uh, physical and biological condition, as Bhikkhu Bodhi explained. So then the doctor was a friend of mine, so he was having a discussion with me whether there is something mentioned in Buddhism. So what exactly I was telling was very similar to Bhikkhu Bodhi said, because it's hard to give a very clear guidance. But
mm.
what I was telling is that this is the thing, from the background of the family. That is a family which has so many issues. That's why this
Mm.
girl was raped, and we cannot actually explain the Dhamma to them because of the gravity of the problems like poverty and other
Yeah, yeah,
social issues. So we cannot ask them to think about the karma, and this could be a karma
yeah,
maybe coming from the previous life. These answers
yeah,
actually do not work in that kind of situation.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
I was doing is that uh, giving some blessings to the girl and also the nurses and attendants. And what I was telling is that I could help this girl any way I could, like educate for education and financially. So let us know. But the story was done after that. Nobody contacted me. There are a number of cases like that I heard during the last couple of years from Sri Lanka and elsewhere, from India also. So as you suggested, Bhante, it's very hard for us to give a clear answer, but we can make these people happy
yeah,
just by asking to do more on the Dhamma, like studying the Dhamma, being close to
yeah,
the
yeah,
Dhamma, and that kind of things could be shared with them. It's
yeah,
hard. It's a hard situation for us.
yeah. I wonder if there are a couple of bhikkhunis on the call here. Maybe they have some thoughts about this from a feminine perspective.
Yeah, we have Aya Sobana and also Aya Soma. If you have any, Aya Sobana, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, only that the spectrum of honoring life is held most strongly when it's looked at a broad level. Some religious extremists get very focused on worrying about abortion, but then they would be refusing to take the COVID vaccine because they think if they get sick, it's God's will, and it doesn't matter if they infect a lot of other people. So they're not really, they just become unbalanced in looking at it. Every woman should have a very unbiased and supportive way to examine her own heart and her own values to see what the decision will be without being forced and pressured. I mean, if somebody is forced and pressured to have a baby, that can be a tremendous psychological trauma, especially if it's like in a case of rape or a case of some kind of extreme circumstance. And likewise, a woman or a girl who's pressured into getting an abortion without giving a chance to, look deeply into her own values and see whether carrying that life to term is what is really in her heart to do. So I think that's the main thing is to try to create a space where each woman or girl has got an opportunity to look carefully at the decision and to make their own decision, and to not be unduly pressured.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, so we need to continue because we have more questions to ask.
I think that question could take a whole hour in itself.
Yeah. So before we go to next question, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Bhante Vimala, who is joining us from Czechoslovakia, and he's the author of the Lessons of the Lotus. So it's wonderful to have you, Bhante. And Bhante Uparatana is joining us from Washington, D.C. Okay, so I would like to invite Bhante Pemaratana to ask the next question, which is come from another layperson from Brazil.
Excuse me, Bhante.
Can
okay.
you
Yes.
can you ask the question number 8?
Yeah. Okay. Reverential greeting to Bhikkhu Bodhi and all the other venerable monks here. Let me read the question. Bhante Bodhi, this is from Gustavo Pavanello from Mogi Mirim City, Brazil. Please allow me to ask you a question. In case of a war, would it be better to disobey the government's call as for not incurring the risk of taking many lives? I think he's asking about the drafting, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so the question, I guess, supposes that there is what we used to call conscription or the draft, which means that the government can compel people within a certain age range to join the army, and many of them will be forced to take up a combat role. Here in the United States now, we no longer have the conscription, and so we have an entirely volunteer army. And so we're never, I believe, in a situation where one is obliged to take up arms. So I guess there can be a case where somebody joins the army voluntarily, not expecting to be involved in a war, and then is sent off to a combat zone in order to fight. Anyway, within, say, a country like the United States, there's a particular status we used to have when the draft was in effect called the conscientious objector status. And so if you claim to be a conscientious objector, then, well, there are two kinds of conscientious objectors. One refuses to participate in military service in any form whatsoever. And if one can get the backing of some authority to support one's claim to be a conscientious objector, then one can be excused from military service. The other conscientious objector does not entirely refuse to serve in the military, but refuses to serve in a combat role. And in that case, they can join the military, but serve in some other role. For example, in the working in medical service or in the cooking staff in the army. Okay, so if one is in a country in which there is conscription and one doesn't want to be drafted and to risk having being compelled to take up a combat role and to take lives, then one can claim conscientious status. And if that country doesn't have the opportunity, doesn't offer the option of conscientious service, then one might have to go to prison if one refuses to serve in the military. So if one's sense of conscience about taking lives is strong enough, then one would be willing to go to prison rather than fight in a combat role.
Any other thoughts to share along with this answer? Okay. So we are going to go to the next question. It's from Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa, Canada.
Thank you, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi and other bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Let me ask this question. As a bhikkhu and bhikkhus and bhikkhunis in the modern society, how do we manage self-discipline and reach goals in Buddhism as stated in Buddhist teaching? When we read suttas, Bhante, and associate those disciples' enlightening stories very closely, almost all of them made the way to their enlightenment by the total separation from busy social obligations. You can see this from many stories from the great disciples of the Buddha. Today, with much duties on our shoulders, I feel we become more valuable to people, devotees, society in many ways. Yeah. But do we miss the golden opportunity for enlightenment? Because sometimes I'm overwhelmed with some duties and I see them that I do with compassion and kindness for these people, but at the same time, I feel that that whole time could be useful for something else. As a senior monk, this is my question. As a senior monk, what can you tell to us with this concern? With your experience, what steps do you suggest for us to take to meet the challenges like this and move forward on the Noble Eightfold Path? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have to remember in addressing this question that there are many different modes in which one can live a monastic life, ranging from those who make the choice to go to live a fully secluded ascetic life, dwelling in aranyas in the forests, devoting themselves pretty much to full-time meditation. So that is one extreme. And then on the other extreme, those who are completely involved in social activities, rituals, preaching, training of younger monks, teaching in schools and so forth, performing various social services. And so those are two extremes. I don't mean extremes in a negative way, but two opposite modes in which one can be living a monastic life. And even if one is living a busy social life with many social obligations, commitments, and duties, still, I would say it's essential to uphold the vocation as a monastic, to devote some time every day to one's personal cultivation. So one should set out certain periods each day that one can devote to one's meditation practice. And from time to time, when the opportunity opens up, one should try to find the chance to go off and to do a period of retreat every year, whether it's a week, 10 days, a month, whatever. So even when one takes on a life of social obligations, one should not neglect one's inner cultivation, because that is the distinctive calling of the monastic. But even when one is engaged in social obligations and duties, one could do this with different attitude of mind. It's the attitude of mind which is quite critical in those situations. One kind of attitude of mind is to think, I don't really like doing this, but I'm under a lot of pressure from others to do this. I really resent this. I would like to go off to the forest and meditate, but I'm compelled to do this. And then one builds up a lot of anger, resentment, displeasure, and one leads that kind of monastic life in a rather unhappy frame of mind. Another way is to see that even when fulfilling these duties and obligations, this is an opportunity to practice as well. So one shouldn't think that mental cultivation takes place only when one is sitting in a kuti in a secluded forest, but also when one is serving others. One could be in one's mind developing the divine attitudes of loving kindness and compassion. And when one is dealing with people, listening to them speak about their problems or observing the problems, one could see this is a kind of revelation or demonstration of the first noble truth, the noble truth of suffering. I know monks who their main duty is to perform funeral services. But by performing these funeral services, they constantly have the opportunity to meditate on death and impermanence. And in that way, they can develop a strong sense of nibbida, of disenchantment with the worldly life. And so when they sit down to meditate, then they can develop the power of meditation very, very quickly and very powerfully. Whereas the other monk who goes off to meditate in the forest, living very quietly and peacefully, still has a lot of trouble controlling and restraining the mind. And they're always thinking about the pleasures and enjoyments of the worldly life that they might be missing.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I would say is that whatever situation one is in, one should use that as an opportunity to be developing wholesome qualities. So even if one, because of one's life situation, one is obliged to fulfill a number of social commitments, again, one could use that as the opportunity for developing noble qualities. This is what we call developing paramis. So when in those situations, one could be developing patience, energy, loving kindness, determination, equanimity, generosity by sharing the Dhamma with others. And while in the midst of activity, try to cultivate an inner renunciation, an inner nekama.
Thank you very much, Bhante Bhikkhu Bodhi, for the wonderful answer. So basically, if we have right understanding or yoniso manasikara on what we are doing based on compassion, we can take care of many things. So it would be sometimes a slow but very firm progress on the path as a result of our compassionate behavior as a monk and as nuns and bhikkhunis. We would be able to fulfill our aspiration on the Dhamma. So that's what we can get from your very nice answer. Yeah, when I read the great disciples of the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta, Moggallana, and all these great monks saw the previous Buddhas as well, but they were having so many lifetime after that, to fulfill their final, achievement. So it brings me a joy when I read those stories because of that fact that I'm not wasting my time by doing these compassionate activities. So it means to me that I'm collecting some momentums with these activities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But also, as I said, one should, as a monk, we should always sort of stake out certain periods of time, even when one is busy with one's obligations, stake out some time every day to devote to our own cultivation in silence and in solitude. And I want to give like one example of this. In the 1970s, when I was in Sri Lanka, I spent several months in the Colombo hospital, and I stayed with, there was a Buddhist hospital service in the Colombo General Hospital run by a monk from Vajrayana. His name was Venerable Vipassy. I think he passed away in the 1980s. So I stayed with him, and he was always very busy every day going around meeting patients, seeing if they needed any medicines, arranging them to get the medical attention that they needed, chanting period for them. But I noticed every day he would have periods both in the morning and the evening in which he would do some recitation, and then he would sit in meditation for a half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening. So even living in the hospital where there's always a lot of noise around, clanging of different instruments and so on, the crying out of patients, movements coming in and out of the hospital, but he would always find time for his personal practice.
Bhante, that hospital service council is very active these days, and the monk who does it is Bhikkhu Bodhi. Actually, we are working with him these days just to give a lot of support. I think Bhante Sarnapala is well aware of him and a friend of himself. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that is a great answer, Bhante Bodhi. I think we all can try our best to practice Dhamma while we are busy, occupied with all the social and spiritual commitments. Yeah. So, well, let us move to the next question. And so I have assigned that question to Bhante Sujato from Australia, but he is not here today. So on his behalf, I would like to ask this question from Bhante Bodhi. So this is a question from a layperson from Indonesia. And he said, I pay my respect to all Bhantes. I am Dhammika from Indonesia, Batam City. The question I want to ask is, what is Buddhist perspective on LGBT and gay marriage based on Buddha's discourse and thought? How to treat people with LGBT backgrounds? Thanks for chance given to me asking question. Sadhu.
Yeah, as far as basing the answer or this perspective on the Buddhist discourses, there's really nothing in the discourses that speak explicitly about how to relate to LGBT people, and certainly nothing in ancient India about gay marriage, which I think would be rather inconceivable in that period of time. And so here I think what we have to use is the spirit of the Buddha's teaching rather than specific principles that would have been laid down by the Buddha's teaching. And so I would say that looking at this issue from the lens of the Buddha's teaching, that these are not in any way ethical questions at all, but the Buddha's teaching is very tolerant of people of different ways of life as long as they don't inflict any harm on others. And I mean, when I was growing up, even in my earlier years, even in my 30s, 40s, 50s, again, the idea of gay marriage was rather inconceivable. But now here in the United States, it's established legally. And so as long as people, whether of the same sex, if they marry, if they remain faithful to each other, if they love each other, treat each other with respect, then we can approve of it. And we should also treat people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, again, with loving kindness and respect. And I think from the Buddhist perspective, we could look at things like transgender or transgender issues and LGBT from the idea that, well, I've heard some people from a staunch fundamentalist Christian background say there are only two genders, male and female. But from the Buddhist perspective, we've all gone through countless lifetimes in which we've been of many different genders. And so I think what happens is that a person who may have spent several lives as a female, then through the workings of karma comes to rebirth in a male body, might still have the sense of female identity. And so that sense of female identity becomes prominent, and then they identify as female, even though they're biologically male. And the same in the converse case of a female woman, a person in a female body who identifies as male. So, looking at it through the lens of the Buddha's teachings on rebirth, we carry the seeds of many different gender identities and sexual identities from many past lives. And so these identities are not always identical with our biological endowment.
Yeah, so Bhante, another person also asked the same kind of question. It's from Gabriel from Lajeado city in Brazil. It says, how does Buddhism see marriage of same-sex people? So
Yeah,
I think,
basically, it's the same. It's really the same question.
yeah.
And so there's no like universal Buddhist perspective. So we can't say that Buddhism regards marriage of same-sex people from one way or another. But we could say, what is the proper attitude that accords with, I would say, with the Buddhist outlook on life, with the Buddhist perspective on the way to treat other people. And so we treat a person, whether they're heterosexual, homosexual, transgender, whatever, we treat them with kindness, consideration, respect, and try to provide them with opportunities to live in ways that they can be true to themselves and flourish in their own identities. The only constriction is if any action involves or any way of behavior involves imposing harm on others, suffering others, that is what has to be rejected.
Bhante, I should do my Vinay reading, but I use my freedom to ask you and the Sangha here that are only heterosexuals allowed to enter the order in Theravada tradition? Or,
Only heterosexuals.
yeah?
No,
Does it even matter?
No, there's no question is asked in the preliminary phase to ordination. What is a person's sexual orientation? All that is asked is to ensure that a person who wants to become a bhikkhu has to confirm that they are a man, a male, and a person who wants to become ordained as a bhikkhuni has to affirm that they are biologically a female. But one is never questioned about one's sexual orientation. And in fact, I mean, if we look at the Vinaya, we see in the Buddha's time that there were, at least I'm familiar with the portions of the Bhikkhu Vinaya, where there were bhikkhus who committed homosexual actions with other bhikkhus or with lay people. And those actions led to, if they involved penetration, it led to expulsion from the order, to parajika. If it didn't involve penetration, then it entailed the Sanghadisesa offense. But the fact that they were homosexual itself did not require expulsion from the Sangha. It was the engagement in sexual activity that entailed the expulsion. But that is the same whether it's homosexual or heterosexual activity. If it involves penetration in any way, then it entails a parajika. If it's short of penetration, then it entails Sanghadisesa in the case of a bhikkhu.
I guess it is certain eunuchs like pandakas who are not.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I think Bhante. Okay, yeah, Bhante Kamlasiri. Yeah.
I think it is different because it is not the sexual habit; it is biological thing.
Yeah.
Because there is a question: where do we keep them, in a temple or nunnery?
You mean with the pandika?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember there were different classes of pandikas, but I don't remember exactly what the classes were. This isn't fresh in my mind now. But the pandika, I guess, would be somebody who doesn't fit into either male or female, and so they wouldn't be able to fit into either the Bhikkhu Sangha or the Bhikkhuni Sangha.
There are 5 in numbers, and actually with rightful guidance, it is said that three should be, taught how to think, and by way of thinking, they could be changed their behavior on
Yeah.
sexual orientation. But I found that that explanation says two are not completely changed. That's what I found in reading.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't looked at this in a long time, so it's not fresh in my mind.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
Well,
maybe
when
okay.
So, but I think no matter what gender relationship somebody has,
Yeah.
every relationship leads to suffering, dukkha, isn't it?
Oh, that is true. That is true.
So the Buddha's main point is to liberate everyone from suffering.
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
Uh,
I was going to
I
say that, when we teach children, they normally ask these questions from us, and I say, in the heart of awakening, somebody's identity as gay, lesbian, transgender, or none of
Yeah.
that matter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
Okay, so let
I
us
like to add something, Sarpala.
Oh, okay, yeah, please go ahead.
According to Buddhism, there is Buddhism not against to the sexual habits, just only the sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, if anyone do committed sexual abuse, that Buddhism not approve. Even though the LGTB also do the abuse, then it is not acceptable.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, maybe we should move on.
let us move to the next question. I would like to invite Venerable Ayya Sobana to ask this question on behalf of Marilyn from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Ayya Sobana, can you turn on? Yeah, the question number
But
13.
I'm not sure that I have access to the list of the questions.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. I
I could see the question. I have it on the. I have your email in front of me.
yeah. Okay, Bhante, you can.
Okay, I'll read it out loud.
Yeah.
It's a rather complicated. It's a rather long question. Okay,
Yeah.
this is from Marilyn Lemon from Vancouver, British Columbia. I understand that we must not kill, but what about prolonging life? Is it right to keep somebody alive against their will? Is the use of equipment to keep somebody alive skillful or cruel? Doesn't it cause unnecessary suffering? Does it make a difference if they are unconscious and not able to make that decision themselves? If we are not afraid of death, then a do not resuscitate order seems to make sense at any age, but especially now with COVID. If we don't have a DNR, are we just clinging to life when we know the medical community can and must do just about anything to keep us alive? Are ECMO machines, ventilators, and even pacemakers harmful in the long run? Yeah, that's a question that certainly goes beyond my expertise, but I'll just take the first set of questions. It seems certainly it would be contrary to the Buddhist ethical injunction not to kill, to take measures to terminate the life of a person, that is to commit euthanasia. Again, this is quite a sensitive question because I could well understand the situation of a person who has, say, an extremely painful illness, which is not responsive to any kind of medication. And the doctors determine that that this person has only, say, 3 months or 6 months to live. And it's a matter of enduring an extremely painful condition that is going to grow worse and become more and more painful, and they ask for their life to come to an end. I have full compassion for that person. And maybe if I weren't a monk, I would actually endorse that person's decision to have their life come to an end. but as a monk, I don't want to say that. But as far as prolonging life goes, suppose that we don't have a clear decision from the person about whether they want their life to be prolonged or not. I would say that there's a certain obligation to try to extend their life as long as there is a possibility that they can return to full consciousness and resume living a normal life. But suppose somebody is being kept alive by machines, and it becomes pretty clear that the person has almost no chance of recovering normal consciousness, and that it is only the machines that are keeping that person alive. In my opinion, and this is a very personal opinion, it would not be contrary to the precepts to terminate the use of those machines, because one is not deliberately doing something to cut off the life faculty of that person, but one is simply stopping the use of artificial means to extend a life for which there seems to be an extremely slim chance or almost no chance at all of that person recovering consciousness and resuming a normal, fulfilling life. Perhaps that's the simple answer to that question. And again, I want to throw the floor open to other points of view on this.
Okay, so anyone has any thought to share? I know, Bhante Vijita, you are in that field. You have something to share with us.
Thank you, Bhante Sarvapala. Thank you, Bhikkhu Bodhi. And I'm the one who asked that question 2 weeks ago about medically assisted dying. And I couldn't join the dialogue at the beginning, but I listened, and thank you so much for your explanation. I often go to hospital to, see patients in different conditions and support them spiritually. It's not mainly a Buddhist patient, but from different faith traditions as well. When I see these ethical dilemmas, one thing that I see through the Buddhist point of view is what is the intention behind their actions? Mm-hmm. Sometimes some patients make those decisions because they don't want to be a burden to their family.
Yeah.
Sometimes they live in a hospital bed for months and years, so they feel like they are wasting lots of resources that can give to other people. So there are some compassionate intention behind some of those actions. So when we see that intention, the weight of those intentions are mixed with so much compassion and love toward others. So I think that's one of the perspectives that we can reflect with those people who are pursuing these decisions. Thank you.
All right, so let us move to the next question. So I would like to invite Bhante Sudhaso from New York to ask the question from Philip from Brazil.
So Philippe's question says, how should we act when it comes to bringing peace to conflicts? When my friends have conflicts between themselves, I feel like I should try to calm them. What is the right action?
I think one might be able to get a good answer from this from somebody who has training in what is called conflict resolution. There's a whole discipline of conflict resolution, which has developed over the last few years, of how to serve as a mediator, to bring people together when they're in conflicts. I don't have specific training in that myself, but when there are conflicts, probably the best way is to, I don't know, does anybody here have experience as a conflict mediator? Perhaps they could shed more light on this than I can myself.
Oh, everybody's quiet.
I think actually there are advice within the Vinaya Pitaka, if I remember. So again, I haven't looked at this in a long time, of what to do when there are Yeah, actually, it's also found, I believe, in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 103, when there is a well, this is when there's a conflict between monks in regard to the interpretation of the Dhamma. But let me just see if I could quickly locate that sutta. It's Majjhima Nikaya number 103.
And also, Bhante Bodhi, there's a particular story about the Buddha's relatives, mother's side and father's side. They were about to engage in a war.
Yeah, that's a well-known
So
story.
Buddha appeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, we don't have personal experiences on solving conflicts. By quote unquote, conflict has a lot of meanings between two people. It would be an issue, and when we use the conflict, does it mean that the huge chaos? Because this word has different meanings. But basically, Buddha said that Jang Verang Pasavati Dukkang Seti Paraj. There are many indications that because one is trying to come back and to defeat others just with the winning options. And some people have this idea that recently one family actually called me uh, because of a conflict, and every time they present their arguments, they want to win over. So basically, since we don't have personal experience, we can come with some solutions from the theory of the Dhamma and Vinaya. It would work sometimes. Sometimes it does not work. I think there are monks here who who have done counseling. Actually, they could have better understanding those conflicts between two people and three people and family matters. So I hope they could contribute with
And
something.
how about our bhikkhunis, Bhikkhuni Vimala or Aya Sobana? Do you have anything to share about this conflict?
Yes.
Okay.
In the Sutta Nipata and the Book of Eights, the sutta about the corrupt, the Buddha says very clearly that in the case of quarrels, sectarian quarrels and disputes, that a wise Muni, a sage, would not become a partisan and would not take a side in the quarrel. So I think that's one very good advice for us, because people would want us to take one side or the other side, but we shouldn't take a side. And instead, we should, we're speaking of the training that leads to peace by way of giving up wrong views. But it's like it's a deep practice that leads to a peaceful heart. But the making one side and the other side right or wrong in a dispute between two people, it could be that that's not the domain where anything useful is going to happen as far as making progress in the Dhamma. And someone would try to change the format or reframe it, like have them think in a completely different way and not be focusing on the points that they're quarreling about.
I like to add a little bit to that.
Yes.
I think the good technique is be calm and peace. Then we can find the answer or method among the situation. because there is no pre-plan. Before we can't today plan which is the answer for that situation. I think even Buddha also used that because the 2 times he tried to stop the Vidudaba attack to the Sakyans, but the 3rd time he also used that technique, let him go.
Yeah, there was the quarrel at Kosambi in which even the Buddha couldn't resolve the conflict between the monks. He had to turn away and go into the Parilaya forest. Yeah.
Over at 4:30.
Yeah. Okay, so let us move to next question. And yes, Sobana, you could mute yourself, I think. So I know next question is about divorce. I know I have asked Bhante Vijay to ask that question. I know Bhante Vijay is neither engaged, nor married, nor divorced, but I want you to ask this question from Bhante Bodhi.
Want to ask this question to me?
So
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante Sanpala, and thank you, Bhikkhu Bodhi. So this question is from Thairiny. It doesn't say where she's from.
From Australia.
From Australia. The question is, Bhante, what is the Buddhist response to divorce? And what are the responsibilities of a husband and wife set out in the Dhamma?
Okay, it's easier to take the second question first. Okay, the responsibilities of the husband and wife to each other are laid out in the Sigalika Sutta in the Digha Nikaya, Sutta number 31. I mean, we don't have to take these as sort of rigid rules, but sort of guidelines for correct behavior. And I just happen to have the book next to me, so let me just take a quick look. So the sutta mentions 5 obligations of the husband to the wife and of the wife to the husband. So the husband should minister to his wife by honoring her, not disparaging her, by being faithful to her, by giving her authority and providing her with ornaments. And then the wife should relate to her husband by organizing her work, by being, this implies like a middle-class family, by being kind to the servants, by being faithful, by protecting these things that are accumulated, and by being skillful and diligent in all she has to do. So of course these obligations are framed against the background of a traditional ancient Indian culture in which it's expected that it's the male who's going to be the so-called breadwinner and the woman is in charge of the household. And so these duties would have to be modified according to our contemporary conditions. But basically the responsibilities of the husband and wife to each other are to treat each other with love, respect, kindness, and care, to allow a certain freedom to each other so that they don't try to impose their own will and control the other. And when conflicts and disputes arise between them, to try to resolve them in a peaceful way, which will be beneficial and fruitful to both of them. I remember another sutta which speaks about 4 kinds of marriages. And it's the marriage of a corpse with the bad kind of partner in the marriage is compared to a corpse, and the good partner is compared to a deva or a devi. And so the deva-like marriage is one in which both husband and wife live by the 5 precepts, practice dana or generosity, and have respect and reverence for ascetics and Brahmins. Okay, so those are in very general terms, responsibilities of a husband and wife to uphold the marriage by living in accordance with the Dhamma. What happens when the relationship doesn't work out and when all attempts at resolving differences fail? I would say that there's no objection in Buddhism to a divorce when a marriage, despite repeated attempts to hold it together, when those repeated attempts don't work, then it would seem that the only solution is for the two partners to separate through divorce. And so there's no religious obligation in Buddhism to a divorce. I think in traditional Buddhist cultures, it's treated very much just as a matter of civil society rather than a religious undertaking. But maybe some of our monks from the traditional Buddhist countries will have more experience with this than I do. Anyone?
This is not traditional, but I remember hearing from Venerable Ajahn Brahm at some point that he mentioned about 3 rings about getting wedded. I think the first one is the engagement ring, the second one is the wedding ring, and the third one is suffering. And also he said in the first year of marriage, wife listens to the husband, and in the second year of marriage, husband listens to the wife. And in the third day of marriage, neighbors listen to both of them. So
I think that's a rather cynical view of marriage. I mean, there are marital relations where the husband and I've known couples like this, well, both in Sri Lanka, here in the United States, in which both husband and wife live in accordance with the Dharma. And their marriage is one in which, of course, there will be from time to time friction, disagreements, but on the whole, it's one that brings a lot of happiness and fulfillment to both partners. It's not, at least from a secular perspective, it's not all suffering. And in fact, we could say that, maybe we could even say that marriage, in a way, provides certain opportunities to develop in the Dharma. Particularly, it provides opportunities to cultivate patience, a willingness to listen to others, to respect the point of view of others, a need to develop beyond just the romantic feelings of love, but to develop a true loving kindness towards another person, focus strongly on another person, which then can become the basis for extending loving kindness to others and to all beings. It also is an opportunity to develop upekkha, or equanimity, as one goes through the ups and downs together. Sometimes one might be, say, economically prosperous, and then one can be happy. There will be times maybe if one of the partners faces unemployment, loses the job, difficulties, and then one has to maintain that loss with equanimity. Times when the couple will be praised, other times they'll be criticized. Again, one has to develop equanimity. So there are, and then of course, opportunities for practicing generosity. So I would say that a marriage, I don't want to be persuading any of my monks to disrobe and get married. But I would say a marital relationship does provide many opportunities. If both partners have a strong commitment to the Dharma, many opportunities to develop within the framework of the Dhamma.
I think, Venerable, the Visakha and Dhammadinna story is quite exemplary, and that they grow together spiritually as well. And at the end, they are both praised by the Buddha for their abandoning of wealth and finally also committing to spiritual life, and particularly Dhammadinna, the wife,
Yeah.
her wisdom is taught in that Vedala Sutras.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think also the discussion about having the couples having similar virtues, similar generosity, similar wisdom, similar faith.
Yeah.
The Buddha says they can be born again and live together. And when I teach that, sometimes they say, "Oh no, 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 that's not what we expect."
I would like to say something related to
Yeah.
the same theme.
Yes, go ahead.
I think when we look at the modern society, marriage has gone on different directions, I guess. Like people have common law relationships and many different other ways of living together, not mainly getting married. So I think it's more how to maintain healthy relationship. So relationship is become kind of major theme in today's society. Uh, like how to maintain healthy relationships. So when it comes to relationship, it can be among monastics or between monastic and lay relatives, lay followers, or among friends, and it can be even work. So how to maintain that healthy relationship. So I think it needs lots of dedication, understanding, respect.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite common in a marriage relationship as well.
Yes,
I recently listened to one of the Dhamma talk given by Bhante Premratana, and he's here today, I guess. Yes, I see him. And how to maintain healthy relationship. I found that a wonderful Dhamma talk is available online.
no, that's wonderful. I need to listen to it. I think that, and also Bhante Bodhi is sometimes I get invitation to come and give the blessings to the couples, and then of course I tell the Ajahn Brahms joke, the engagement ring, wedding ring, and then comes the suffering. And then I tell the couple, you can avoid suffering if you can add another ring. I call it the kindful ring.
Like caring.
I like to talk something about that question about divorce, because all over the world there is so many different marriage customs or culture
Yeah.
that there is no same thing all over the world. It is different. Therefore, this divorce concepts are also uh, must be equal to their customs. Therefore, Buddhism, there is no reason in Buddhism to explain anything about the marriage and the divorce, because of it is not like that social law. Other thing is, according to Buddhism, divorce is not sin.
Oh,
If we
no,
say,
of course, no.
yeah, if we say it is sin, then marriage is merit. Yeah. Then I think we are the marriage people are the people who must keep it in sin or meritful way. Uh, I think they are not necessary any particular answer for about divorce and marriage life. That is, it is community based thing, cultural and community based thing.
I think if marriage was a merit, the Buddha would not have rescued Prince Nanda from the marriage and taken him in the spiritual path. I think one thing that I like to bring to the discussion here is that when I was having a discussion with a chaplain friend, and I happened to say that celibacy is a commitment, and she immediately said, so is marriage. So it is a commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we need to move on to the next two remaining questions because I don't want to
Engaged to marriage.
the people. Of course, this is an hour-long discussion. Next, I would like to invite Venerable Bhikkhuni Vimala to ask her questions from Bhante Bodhi.
Thank you, Bhante Saranapala, and thank you, Bhante Bodhi. It's such an honor to have you here. And so I hope my question, I'm going to do, I'll read both my first two questions as one.
Yeah, I think you could, you could merge them together into one.
Okay. Can you share some of your thoughts on the future, the near future of Buddhism in the Western world? And in the future, do you see a significant growth in the number of male and female monks and support and training for Western monastics? Or do you foresee a rise in secular Buddhism and less emphasis on the ordained Sangha keeping the teachings intact?
Yeah, what's interesting is that it seems that as Buddhism is developing in the West, I would say that it's developing along three tracks. One would be the development of monastic Buddhism. And maybe what's especially significant in the development of monastic Buddhism is the, as you would know from firsthand experience, the revival and spread of a Bhikkhuni Sangha, which is something which, even though it started in Asia back in the 1990s, but now it's developing quite maybe rapidly in the West. Okay, so on the one hand, we have the spread of monastic Buddhism amongst native-born, well, I'm speaking about America, native-born Americans, but probably the same in other Western, at least to some extent in other Western countries. Then we have, this is in the Theravada tradition, more or less, the development of the lay mindfulness movement or the lay Vipassana movement, where we have lineages that stem from monastic Buddhism in Asia, but have been transmitted through lay people who've learned in Asia and then came back to the West and started teaching here. And then it's gone through several generations of teachers guiding and teaching other candidates who have now become teachers in their own right. And so we have quite a broad movement of lay teachers of mindfulness and Vipassana meditation. So that is the second track. A third track is the development of secular Buddhism. And then even within secular Buddhism, there are like numbers of subdivisions. Those, let's say, who explicitly and sometimes even vehemently reject the classical Buddhist teachings of karma, rebirth, other realms of existence, and a world transcending goal, nirvana, nibbana. And those who simply put those issues aside and focus on what we call the immediate benefits of Dharma practice and understanding in this life. Okay, and then on maybe in addition to that, what we have spreading through the culture is the dissemination of purely secular mindfulness practices in which the connection with, explicit connection with Buddhism is invisible, made invisible, or even severed. but in which certain values, Buddhist values, are still propagated through the medium of mindfulness. So along with mindfulness, we have the emphasis on compassion training, finding peace and happiness, cultivating wholesome emotions. And so we have very diverse ways in which Buddhism is making its impact in the West, either strongly and directly through the monastic lineage, maybe in a more diluted way through the lay Vipassana movement, and in a still more oppositional way through the secular Buddhist movement, those who identify as Buddhists but don't affirm the classical Buddhist teachings. And then the teaching of mindfulness and other types of meditation practices without any connection to the Buddha Dharma, without any explicit connection to the Buddha Dharma itself. My apprehension, well, I think it's going to be inevitable that the number of people drawn to the monastic life will increase. And so I think that there will be the arising of more monasteries and temples that ordain and train here in the United States, Americans, whether they be originally from Asia or from those who were grew up in the United States. But also there's going to be, I think each of these different modalities is going to spread in its own way. And the big issue that might have to be faced in the future is how are they going to relate to each other? And of course, as a monk myself, naturally I side with the monastic form of Buddhism. But I'm afraid, somewhat apprehensive, that those who want to make the Buddha's teachings more relevant and meaningful to people growing up in a sort of scientific or secular environment are going to discard the fundamental Buddhist teachings and just focus on Buddhism as a path to well-being and happiness in this present life, or even leave the Buddhism out of it and just use Buddhist practices as a means to develop well-being and happiness in this present life, which, as far as it goes, I have no objection to their doing that if it brings benefit to people. But the problem will be that in a way that they sort of drain the appeal of classical Buddhism by taking the teachings out of their traditional framework and grounding them in a purely secular perspective. Okay, so maybe that these questions that you raise are questions that could be discussed for hours, but maybe this would be a concise answer to that.
I think Bhante Sudaso has a comment to make.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Bhante Bodhi, just following up on that last topic there, briefly speaking, I want to ask if you really consider it's proper to call the so-called secular Buddhism by the word Buddhism, given that, again, several strains of it blatantly reject core Buddhist doctrines. So I'm wondering whether it's even proper to use the word Buddhism. So, and even elements of the so-called insight tradition wander dangerously into the territory of rejecting core Buddhist doctrines, which again makes me wonder whether it's really proper to call them Buddhism.
Yeah,
So
I
have nothing wrong with people practicing meditation to make themselves a little bit happier and calmer. That's all fine. But I think that Buddhism refers to the teachings of the Buddha, and I wonder how you feel about people using it to refer to other things.
Well, my attitude is to let people use whatever designations they want to apply to themselves. So, in fact, I mean, some of the secular Buddhists do seriously study the Buddha's teachings. They have a great respect for the Buddha, at least with regard to certain of his teachings. And so they do appropriate teachings of the Buddha, looked at from a secular perspective, like even the Four Noble Truths, which you can see from a purely from an angle where they become purely relevant to this present life. They find themselves committed to the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path and esteem the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Though what I would say is that even though they say that they esteem the Noble Eightfold Path, that I would say that they are, to the extent that they deny the fundamental Buddhist teachings, that they're deficient with respect to right view. So what I would say is that those secular Buddhists who sort of put in brackets the teachings of the classical framework of karma, rebirth, samsara, and so on, that they are secular Buddhists who are deficient with respect to right view. And those secular Buddhists who appeal to science, which is really naturalistic or materialist science, to reject karma and rebirth, I would say that that they are secular Buddhists who are given over to wrong view. But still, as long as they call themselves Buddhists, I don't want to say you are not a Buddhist, simply that you are not a Buddhist who has right view.
So, Bhante Bodhi, there's a question from a layperson, and she's asking, maybe, what is secular Buddhism? Maybe in 1 or 2 words you can explain.
I think it's rather difficult to summarize secular Buddhism in 1 or 2 words, because as I indicated, there are a whole range of attitudes amongst the secular Buddhists. Basically, secular Buddhists will be those who want to adopt the Buddha's teachings, but relate to them only insofar as they pertain to the conduct of life within this present existence. Maybe that is a very broad characterization of secular Buddhists, but most secular Buddhists go beyond that, and as I indicated, either put in doubt the traditional Buddhist framework of karma, rebirth, and so forth, or explicitly reject those teachings.
Okay. Okay, so as we are getting very closer to the end of this program, our last question would be asked by Bhante Kamalasiri. Bhante Kamalasiri, you can ask the question.
Reverend Sir, I think I have sent email. Once I send the email related to this, then you reply to that kindly. And this question is based on that reply. What is the similarity and difference between the emotional intelligence and yoniso manasikara? I asked the similarities and differences.
I have to confess that I haven't read on emotional intelligence. I know there's a book by Daniel Goleman published decades ago called Emotional Intelligence. I haven't read the book. And so I would be hesitant to make statements about the topic when I haven't specifically looked into it.
Because Professor Pamas, according to Professor Pamasiri,
Yeah.
That subject has started in Peradeniya University. From the Thairiny University, the seats were there. After
what?
that, seats were there in Peradeniya University.
Yeah.
After that, that person who wrote the book, he developed that concept.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That is
I know he lived, Daniel Goleman lived in Sri Lanka in 1974.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had met him. He actually offered me dana.
Therefore, I thought you have experience with him, and I thought you know something.
Yeah, but I didn't read that book.
Okay.
Maybe we need to have another discussion about the emotional intelligence and yoniso manasikara maybe in coming days, and maybe we can give some time to Bhante Bodhi to read the emotional intelligence book by Daniel Goleman, and then we can have a productive discussion about this subject. And so maybe another few, this is the last question from another layperson, anonymous. Why do monks from Thailand, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka join political protests despite Buddha's advice to practitioners on practicing detachment? I know it's a tough question.
But I think the question could be better answered by we have monks from Sri Lanka here.
The Thailand monk.
Perhaps there was one Thai monk. I don't know if we have any Burmese monks here.
No, we don't have Burmese monks. We have a Cambodian monk.
But let me say that okay, let me say my view, because I am an American monk and I've joined political protests, or at least on certain issues, on climate issues and racial issues. I don't consider them contrary in any way to the Buddha's advice on practicing detachment. Practicing detachment means separating oneself from the craving to get benefits, personal benefits for oneself or for the group to which one belongs. But as I said, I think I said this at a previous gathering, that I regard the political field as an area in which great ethical contests are being waged, struggles for right against wrong, for justice against injustice, struggles even for the survival of human civilization when we consider the potential impacts of climate change, struggles to ensure dignity and human rights to people of all races, ethnicities, sexual orientations. And so it's become quite typical or standard in the United States for faith leaders to even to take the forefront in these struggles for human rights and human dignities and human dignity, to stand up for social, racial, communal justice, for environmental sustainability. And what I found, rather to my disappointment, so often the Buddhists are missing in these gatherings aimed at promoting human dignity, justice, and human rights. I remember this goes back to the year 2016. I'm getting a bug in my throat. May I just get up and get some water to wash it down?
Okay.
It's not a real bug, it's just a little bit of phlegm.
Okay. Yeah. So dear friends, let us just be patient for a few seconds. I think Bhante Bodhi, we also have to understand he's at late 70s, I guess. I don't know the exact age.
Bodhi is 76, Bhante.
76, right? Yeah, 76. And talking for 1.5 hours. Bhante Bodhi, I didn't know your exact age.
My exact age?
Age.
Yeah, it's 76.
76, okay.
Okay, so continuing. Yeah, this goes back to 2016. This was when Donald Trump was starting to nominate people to his cabinet. And there was a group of faith leaders spearheaded by the Reverend William Barber, who prepared a petition objecting to some of the candidates that the people that Trump was nominating, on the grounds that they were guilty of different forms of economic oppression, biases, prejudices, and it would lead to harm for the future of the United States if they were to get into these important positions. And so they prepared a petition which was signed by about 2,000 to 2,500 faith leaders. And I did a search through that petition, searching for BUDDH, and I found only one signatory to that. There was, of course, signatures from Christians, Jews, Muslims, even a Taoist signature. I don't think there were Hindus. Perhaps there was one Zoroastrian, but just one Buddhist. And it struck me rather disturbing that on these issues of, again, of social justice, human rights, Buddhists seem to be absent. Yeah, so we had a discussion about this, I remember 2 weeks ago when I spoke, that this is not what I would object to is a Buddhist or a Buddhist monastic endorsing a particular candidate, campaigning on behalf of a candidate, campaigning on behalf of a political party. But I think it's part of the responsibility for at least some monastics, those who are involved, more actively involved with society and for community engagements, to speak up on issues relating to justice, human rights, and environmental sustainability.
Yes, Bhante Bodhi. So with this thought in mind, I would like to end today's bi-weekly sutra discussion. Bhante Bodhi, we are truly, truly grateful to you, and I would like to pay my respect to you. I would like to bring my forehead down to your feet, Bhante Bodhi,
Okay,
because
okay.
knowing you for so many years, and you are such an inspiration and motivation to me personally and to all these venerable monks and nuns who are here. And so, having said that, they have asked me whether in the future would you have time to join our sutra discussion time to time to give more inspiration, more motivation, not to talk about the ethical issues, modern ethical issues, but to have more in-depth sutra discussion based on some sutras.
Okay, from time to time we could do that.
Okay. Oh, that's a great news for us.
But not every 2 weeks.
At least once a month.
Well, that's maybe once every 2 months.
Okay. So that's a good news for us, Bhante. Thank you so much.
Time for yeah.
Yeah. And may you have all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, the Sangha. So now I would like to...
if Jenny Kim is online.
And maybe, did you receive the clock?
I got it yesterday or 2 days ago, maybe 2 days ago.
Okay, yeah, I know Jenny Kim is maybe watching us, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell her. I'll send her a thank you note.
Okay, Bhante.
And the certificate. I see that there was a certificate to sign.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So now I would like to invite Bhante Sunita to recite the Ovada Patimokkha.
Okay, thank you very much, Bhante Sarnapala, and dear respected Venerable Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis. As Bhante Sarnapala said, give me permission to chant and recite the 3 stanzas of the Ovada Patimokkha as the last thing of the discussion. So at the same time, I wish you, Venerable Bhantes and Bhikkhunis, and all the global citizens good health, especially in this time, and happiness and peace. Please stay safe during this time. Sabbha papassa akaranang kusalassa upasampada Sacitta pariyodapanang itang buddhana sasanang Kanti paramang taputitikha Nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha Nahi pabbajito parupaghati Samano hoti parang vihetayantu Anupavadu anupaghatu Patimokkhecha sangvaro Mattang yutacha battasming Pantang cha sayanasanang Adhichitte cha ayugo Etang buddhana sasanang Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante Sunita. You
Yeah, very
have
beautiful
recited
chanting.
beautifully, beautiful
Yeah,
chant.
very
I
beautiful
felt it.
chanting. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I'm very grateful to Bhante Vimala. Actually, it's midnight over there in Czechoslovakia, maybe 1:30. You
Wow.
have stayed up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
And I would like to, okay, just pin Bhante Vimala for our. Can you pin? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is Bhante Vimala. He is the author of the Lessons of the Lotus, and he has done a great service to the world. And he travels a lot, and we are good friends. And Bhante does a lot of humanitarian activities. And so, Bhante, in the future, we are hoping to hear from you. Do you have anything to say, Bhante? You have to unmute yourself, Bhante.
I'm very happy that I could join you for this event. Sarnapala, I appreciate your efforts to bring us all together and provide this opportunity to especially listen to such a special, great master, our Bhikkhu Bodhi. And so I'm grateful. I have been in Czech Republic for last 14 months. I have lived most of the time by myself alone, and I have been actually in a long retreat. I still don't see many people. I heard some, ideas, especially we were talking about how to bring, especially a monastic environment in this complex and busy environment, but to that, I think I have managed to take full advantages of this COVID lockdown, and so I am very happy to participate in this event. Appreciate and grateful for this opportunity, and wish you all the blessings of the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you. And we, of course, we are hoping to see you back in our bi-weekly Sutta discussion. And thank you, Bhante Bodhi, again for your wisdom, your kindness, and my gratitude and thanks to all the venerable monks and the nuns who are here for the discussion from different cities, different countries. And also a big thank you to all our Dhamma friends who are watching us live on Facebook and YouTube. And we are going to see you soon in 2 weeks' time. Until then, all of you stay well and happy. And good night from Canada.
Okay, good night.
Good night.